Here we go. She put into these final words so much bitterness that Nell was startled out of her irritation and out of her own grief. What is it, Percy dear? Are things going wrong? Won't you take off your ulster? We know what ulsters are now. I looked at them last time. Sam got up and made several clumsy attempts to keep the restless intruder out of her cape. When it was off, and she stood before them, slim and erect in her jersey and skirt, she had a warm, youthful-bodied look, like a young skater with tingling veins and bright color that completely contradicted her pessimism. "You look awfully well, Percy," said Nell. "It isn't your health that's wrong, anyway." "You're quite out of it, my dear," returned the other. "I've been feeling dizzy and funny all day. It's this black devilry in the air, I expect, that won't come down. I'd like to tell this day how I detest it." Her childish way of talking about the weather had something that was vaguely reassuring both to Nell and Sam. They had both been feeling an element of fatality in the atmosphere outside, and Percy's petulant detachment of herself from the elements and her concentration upon her personal quarrel with life brought back them that sense that the world was malleable and that anything was possible, which they had both lost. "You two look as if I'd interrupted a lover's quarrel," cried the girl suddenly, with a forced laugh, throwing back her beautiful head. Persephone herself had had two fierce quarrels that Easter, one with her husband and one with Philip, and her present mood was a furious revolt against all men, combined with a melting tenderness for all women. With a sudden impulse, she now went across to Nell's little piano, and after aimlessly playing for a few moments, plunged into the notes of a wistful song, which I will have to sing in a few seconds. This, after a moment, she began to sing as well as to play. Her voice was surprisingly moving as she sang the words. "Woman's grief for a woman's breast, the wind howl fierce over Dunkery beacon. The heart beats faint in its sad unrest, and the knees weaken. Woman's hair for a woman's tying, the waves break wild upon Lulworth Cove. Cover your face and quit your crying, and quell your love. Woman's womb for Ludmore water, the frostbite's bitter on White-Nose Head. Best for the child, whether son or daughter, it lay dead." I'm making this up as I go along. "Woman's tears for a woman's drying, the long night lingers on Salisbury Plain. Love can't reach you where you'll be lying, nor any pain. Woman's bones for a woman's tending, the wet dawn gathers on Wirral Hill. No more saving and no more spending, she lies still. Woman's dust for a woman's wonder, the cold stars shine on a Mendip snows. A grassy mound, but who lies under? No man knows." The song ended, but its spell was not broken for a couple of long minutes. "Is that an old song?" Sam asked. "Not at all. Don't you realize you've got a Wessex poet on her own? Haven't you heard of young Edward Atling of Middlezoy? There's been enough talk going around about him and Lady Rachel to make him famous if his poetry hadn't done it." Sam glanced at the clock on the chimney-piece. It was already nearly 4. "I'll have to leave them and start walking back," he said to himself. "I must be at that woman's house by 5:30. He rose heavily to his feet. The movement he made roused Nell from her woeful passivity into which she had been thrown by the song. "You're not going away, Sam," she cried piteously. "You can't be going away, and you and I not having had hardly a word yet together." Persephone rose to her feet too at this juncture. She was as tall as Sam as she stood up in front of him, for his slouching form was bent a little forward and his long arms were hanging loosely down like those of a gorilla. She placed one of her own arms protectively around Nell's neck, caressing the girl's chin. "I suppose," she said slowly, staring defiantly at Sam, "I suppose you've landed her now with a child?" "I didn't tell her, Sam, I didn't," protested Nell. "She doesn't know," he cried in a harsh, loud voice. "You know you don't know for certain, Nell. It's far too soon. It's only—" But he finished his sentence by repeating his first words. "It's much too soon to be so sure." "You've hurt her feelings indomitably anyway," said Persephone curtly. "It's always better," said Sam calmly, accepting the girl's resentful state with a impassive front, "for people who love each other like Nell and me to settle our difficulties alone." He paused, and there was something approaching a humorous glint in his little eyes. "Perhaps you would not mind going into the garden or into the kitchen for a minute or two." Persephone jerked herself away and retreated across the room towards the staircase. "Well, go on, Sam Decker," she cried sarcastically. "You've only got a bint to deal with. Go on explaining without the faintest notion of what Nell's thinking and feeling." She turned at the staircase foot and flung her final bolt with uncalled-for vehemence. "The fact remains that you've found out one of the happiest girls in Somerset, and you've made her one of the unhappiest." The surly native of Glastonbury, converted into such a singular kind of a saint, was an exercise of self-control that made his jerking lower jaw positively subhuman, answered her quite quietly. "Oh, come now, if you think so little of men, aren't you rather exaggerating my importance?" "Well, I hope you'll never have a child," she gave a little cynical laugh, and yet had a hysterical note in it. "I hope Nell will have 7 beautiful girls by Will Zoyland, and not one of them will ever let any man come near them." "Percy!" gasped Nell in consternation, but noticing how white Percy looked as she came forward now towards them, her tone changed to one of concern. "Percy, you're ill. What's the matter?" Percy held out her hand to Sam. "I apologize, Sam. Don't take anything I say today seriously. The truth is, I've had my own troubles, and it's rather upset me. I dare say you are all right." She sank down in the nearest chair. "Have you any whiskey, Nell?" Nell made a sign to Sam to get the drink. When he handed her the whiskey, his face expressed genuine concern, and this Persephone did not miss. "Oh, I'm all right," she gasped, choking a little and spilling the drink on her gray jersey. Then she handed him the glass, and tilting back her chair, stretched out her long arms in a gesture of utter weariness, her fingers clenched. "Damn it, I'm sorry, you two," she murmured, letting her arms sink down again. She jerked her chair back now into its natural position, and covering her mouth with her hand, yawned extravagantly. Then she rose to her feet. "I don't know what's the matter with me today," she said. No, I don't want to sit down, Nell. I've been sitting down too much today. Look here, you two, wouldn't you like to ride into Glastonbury? I'll bring you back here, one of you, both of you, just as you want. But it would be a change to get out our tea in town. Come on, I'll treat you. Let's go to the Pilgrims and have an amusing time." Sam indicated his promise to be at Titty Petherton's that afternoon at 5:30. "Crummy Garrett has been looking after the woman today while the nurse takes a holiday," he explained. "Ever since the Garretts have shown an interest in her, she's been better. She gets up now and comes down, though of course she can't ever get well, and she still suffers a lot. Mr. Garrett can always spirit her pain away, but it's a conjuring trick, and I don't like the man." Sam began walking up and down the room, a puzzled frown on his face. The two girls watched him. A quick feminine glance passed between them, a glance as old as the camel's hair's tents on Arabia Deserta. A glance that said, "See how these masculine prophets of the Lord refuse credit to each other." "I can't understand it," Sam went on, mumbling his words as if he's speaking to himself. "The man talks in an almost jocular fashion of the blood of Christ, but he does drive Titty Petherton's pain away. I've seen it. I've seen the woman fall asleep, but there's something evil about him to me. Father doesn't feel like that. Father gave him the sacrament once. Father rather likes him and is glad to have him to visit Titty. But I'm not so sure. Sometimes I feel as if, when he sends her pain away, he were doing it by the power of the devil. Only," here Sam smiled a rather boyish smile, "only I don't believe in the devil." The two girls had drifted across to the couch now and were sitting there side by side, Percy's arm above Nell's waist. "I could help you with that sick woman just as well as Crummy Gerd," was Nell's comment upon the discourse. "I promised to take Titty over to her aunt's, old Miss Leggs," Sam said. "That woman!" cried Percy. She looked at Nell. "Do you know what Mrs. Legge is?" "Look here, you two," said Sam, disregarding her question. "Why don't you two come with me to Mrs. Legge's? It's in the slums, you know, but there'll be tea at some sort." "Oh, I don't want to go at all," Nell faltered. "I'd much sooner be left alone here." "I know you would," said Persephone, "and cry your eyes out too. I know that. But the point is that's the worst thing you could do. I know I can't persuade you, but perhaps if you get into your head that if you did it, it would certainly spoil Sam's evening." Half an hour later, and they were all three speeding towards Glastonbury. Persephone driving her car at reckless pace, Nell watching Sam's countenance with intense puzzled scrutiny, and Sam himself anxiously pulling out his watch every minute or two and exclaiming, "I don't want to hurry you, but if you could pass that thing we should be." Persephone kept persuading Nell that this accompanying him to Mother Legge's respectable but comprehensive party would make no difference to the lady who was giving it. "If she expects him and Miss Garrett," she said, "I don't suppose she'll mind our coming." Nell was more diffident. "You go with Sam, Percy, and I'll go and see Dave. He's still in some room, isn't he, where you were before? I don't really see how we can invade this woman's place, so many of us, and without a word of invitation." Percy burst into a wild fit of laughing when she heard this. They were standing on the cobblestones now, outside Mrs. Petherton's dilapidated Gothic house, and the tall girl bent herself down over the wooden railings, where John Crow had first broached to barter the idea of betraying Philip and coming over to Gerd. She gave herself up to such a violent laughing fit in this dingy ramshackle spot of pigsties and puddles that tears ran down her convulsed cheeks. "Well, I've got into the house now," said Sam. "Of course, she may be too ill to come out. I expect you two have better wait here till I bring her out. I was going to take her around in a taxi, and even now that may be the best, but I'll go in and see." He had no sooner disappeared than a taxi drew up beside their car. There was a huddled figure inside this conveyance, but the driver got out, touched his cap, and asked them if this was the house where Mr. Decker was. "Had a call to come here straight from Miss St. Michael's Inn, ladies," he declared with some embarrassment. Then he hurriedly went back to his cab, peered through the closed window for a second, and returned to their side. "Is he drunk, do you think?" whispered Nell to her companion. "I be in an awkward case, ladies," the man mumbled. "There be a woman here come with I against all sense. She be wombly and she's poor head. She wouldn't bar with I because 'twere a holiday, and she likes to bide with I on holiday and have a bite of summit. But you heard me boss say to I, 'Sally Lou,' says me boss, 'here be a order from vicarage. 'Tis to pick up Mr. Sam Decker at Titty Petherton's and take 3 o' they out to Miss Legge's to Paradise.' And soon as this poor crazy woman heard the name Mr. Decker, What must a glimsy body do but climb into a taxi, and not but I could get she out of it. And now I be terribly worried that what Mr. Decker will say, too, when I tell her there'll be a crazy woman in taxi. Eesh. Both the ladies glanced nervously at the taxi window. Yet Sally Lou had spoken no less than the truth. There, just inside, her face actually touching the glass of the window, and her 8 bony knuckles pressed against the bottom of the window frame, was the wild, staring countenance of Mad Bet. She wore a grander hat than usual, all decorated with artificial forget-me-nots in honor of Easter Monday. But as she stretched her thin neck forward to stare at the 2 ladies, this appendage tilted a little sideways, betraying to their astonishment eyes the fact that her skull was as smooth and white as an uncracked egg. The girls had moved towards the window of the taxi, now with their trembling hand on Percy's wrist, for Mad Det was now making obscure signs to them both, while Sally Lou was gazing in melancholy interest at Mrs. Spear's car, when 3 figures came round the corner from the old house. Crummy was supporting the invalid woman on the left side, while Sam held her up to the right. And we'll stop there for today. Hopefully this won't be out of sync again, but it might be. I think I need to restart my computer, but I've just been a little bit lazy these days. Anyway, stay safe out there. Fight the good fight. Until next time, I'll see you in Glastonbury. Cheers.